So this entity is called small medium pleomorphic T cell lymphoproliferative disorder, and it typically presents as a solitary growing papule or nodule, typically on the head and neck region, although the upper torso can be involved. Histologically, what you see is typically a dense, diffuse, and nodular infiltrate that extends throughout the dermis and at times can involve the superficial subcutaneous tissue. Usually you don't have prominent epidermotropism, and that is a characteristic feature of this entity. Otherwise, we'd have to call it mycosis fungoides. So epidermotropism should not be a feature that's identified. If you do see epidermotropism, though, it's typically rare and it's usually focal. And the presence of epidermotropism should make you question the diagnosis and consider mycosis fungoides instead. So in this case, we have an infiltrate that is situated around the blood vessels as well as around the adnexal structures. And on closer examination, you will appreciate that the infiltrate is quite mixed. It's composed of lymphoid cells, but also histiocytes. So if we go in on high power, you will see both lymphocytes. These are our lymphocytes here. And the lymphocytes range in size from small to intermediate or medium sized. And then in the background, you also have histiocytes, like these guys. Okay. I'll show you some other cell types that are classically found in this entity when we look through the immunohistochemical stains. But on low power, really appreciating the density of the infiltrate, which should make you consider lymphoma, but also the distribution and the nodular distribution of the infiltrate is key as well. So we'll go to the immunohistochemical stains, and the lymphoid infiltrate that I pointed out, this is the CD3 stain. So you can see that the majority of that lymphoid infiltrate is CD3 positive. CD3 is a great stain for highlighting the nuclear contours, so you'll be able to appreciate the size of the lymphoid infiltrate. And in this entity, there's quite a good range of size. We'll see both. We'll find a good field here showing the range, and hopefully you can appreciate that there are small lymphocytes, but also intermediate sized lymphocytes. So you can see that there are medium-sized lymphocytes like these. They're quite large ones too. And you can have large pleomorphic lymphocytes in this entity, but they shouldn't constitute more than 30% of the infiltrate. And then you have smaller lymphocytes in the background. And then medium-sized lymphocytes. So you will see a mixture of sizes of lymphocytes. They all are CD3 positive, which is a mature T cell marker. Okay, so this is the CD3 stain. Once again on low power, so you can appreciate the density of the infiltrate. Now let's look at the CD20. In contrast, CD20 stains B cells, and another feature for this disorder is the presence of clusters of admixed B lymphocytes that are CD20 positive. And you can see the CD20 positive clusters that are nested within the zones that contain predominantly CD3 positive T cells. Now I want to show you some other T cell markers. These infiltrating T cells, these atypical T cells, are also CD2 positive. So let's see, I'm going to take you in closer so you can appreciate that the same cells we saw that were 3 positive are also CD2 positive. And if we focus in right next to the adnexal structure, you can hopefully appreciate that range in size where the smaller as well as all the way up to the larger size lymphoid cells are staining with CD2 in this instance. And then I'll show you CD5, which is another mature T cell marker. And CD5 is also positive to a similar degree. There we go. This is the CD5. If we go in on higher power, focus in, you can see once again the same range of cells and distribution of cells as positive with CD5. Now let's look at the CD4 and the CD8. This is the CD4. Now this is a CD4 predominant T-cell lymphoproliferative disorder. And so when we look at the spread of the infiltrate, you can see that there are quite a few cells within the nodular aggregates that are CD4 positive, but there are also cells in the interstitium, so between the nodular aggregates, that are also CD4 positive. Remember that your CD4 is also going to highlight your histiocytes, so it might look a lot denser than you appreciated with the CD3, but it's also picking up histiocytes, of which there are many. But the bright brown staining should correspond to your lymphocytes, and when you go in on high power, hopefully you can appreciate that the smaller lymphocytes as well as the intermediate and larger sized lymphocytes are picking up with the CD4 stain, and the fluffier lighter brown staining in the background corresponds to histiocytes. Okay, so this is our CD4. Now let's compare that to the CD8 stain. And the CD8 stain, as you can see here, is staining a much smaller population of the T cells relative to the CD4. And when you go in on higher power to the exact same locus we were at before, you'll hopefully notice that the CD8 is predominantly staining the smaller reactive T cells, not the atypical T cells. So these are very small lymphocytes. Okay? So the atypical T cells are positive for 2, 3, 4, 5, and not for 8. Now I did mention that the infiltrate tends to be quite mixed, so aside from the lymphoid cells, this stain here, the CD68, is highlighting all the histiocytes that are picking up with the CD68. So there are quite a few scattered histiocytes about this infiltrate. I also want to show you the CD123, which should highlight plasmacytoid dendritic cells, and there's quite a bunch of them in here. Now, there's some overlap with your histiocytoid cells with this stain, but it's also picking up plasmacytoid dendritic cells, so quite a good infiltrate thing. So, small medium pleomorphic T-cell lymphoproliferative disorder has a very good prognosis, and the cell of origin is believed to be the T follicular helper cell. It's not uncommon to see T-cell gene rearrangements with TCR-PCR studies, and loss of mature T-cell markers is very unlikely and uncommon in this entity.